All right, we're getting so close I can almost see the end. So let's finally get this save button to work so that we can update our user information. I'm going to go back to my front end, and I'm actually going to move this here so I don't have to keep seeing the backend code. And within here, I want to create a new method. I'm once again going to just make this a little bit smaller so it's cleaner. And I'm going to create a new method called onProfileChange, or let's call it onProfileUpdate. And this is going to receive some sort of data. And this data, well, we're going to do exactly what the backend expects us to do. That is to fetch our HTTP localhost at port 3000, where we have our Docker container. And we're going to do a profile, and we want to give it some sort of an ID. Well, we can just do template strings instead of strings here, and change this to $ curly brackets, and in here do our user's ID. Remember, we get as props the user object that includes the ID. So we can just simply say this.props.user.id. So whatever ID of the user is, that's the one that we want to post to. And the way we post to fetch is we have to actually tell it, because otherwise the default is get. So the second parameter is going to be an object that has method of post. We're going to give it the headers of content type. And we're going to give it JSON. So we're going to say application JSON because we're sending on JSON data in the body, as we'll see. And like we discussed, the JSON stringify. So we're turning everything into a string. And what are we turning into a string? Well, we're going to return form input with the data that the function receives. So the body is going to send form input as the object that contains all the data that the backend expects, which is name, age, and pet. Let's do a .then here. That's going to receive a response after this post call. And we'll say that, what should we do? Well, first thing we want to do is definitely toggle the modal. We want to turn it off. And remember, we receive that as part of the props. And we also want to run the load user function that we have in the app. Now, what does the load user do again? If we go back to app.js, we see that the load user function, which gets run right after we sign in, simply sets the state of the user object that gets returned. And we simply need to pass it some data that includes these things. So in our case, we can just do a nice shorthand way with spread operator. I can say this.props.user, whatever we've had before. So we get to keep the ID of the user. Remember, the props includes the user ID. And then we're also going to, on top of that, any updates that may include within the data, that is within the form. So it's going to overwrite whatever is in the user object. Maybe the age got changed. In that case, it's going to overwrite whatever's in the this props user. And we create this object, right? And then finally, let's do a nice .catch. And for now, we'll just do a console log. Moment of truth. Let's save everything. See if this actually works. Well, first things first, make sure that we pass load user and we have access to load user in the profile. If we go back to app.js, profile, nope, doesn't have load user. So let's pass that. If we go back, or in here, we can just say load user is going to be this dot load user. Let's save, go back, sign in once again for the millionth time, go to View Profile. And I just realized we forgot to do something, didn't we? When we click the Sign In button, well, we need to actually call the onProfile update, don't we? That's the most important part. So let's do that. I'm going to scroll all the way down, open up whatever we're rendering, scroll all the way down to the Save button. And here in the Save button, let's do a onClick function. And this onClick is going to have this dot on profile update, and we're going to pass it name, age, and pet. And if we go up, we see that the user is props, and this can get confusing. We don't want the props, we want whatever the state is. So this dot state, which is name, age, and pet. So let's pass that on. I'm going to say this dot state. All right, and I don't really like the way this looks. This should be something cleaner and more descriptive. So let's come up here and say const name, age, pet is going to equal this dot props or this dot state, because we're only interested in the state that the form has been filled with. And in here, instead of this dot state, we can just use destructuring and say name, age, props, because it's expecting a data object. And again, we're not calling the function here. We want to assign the function to the onClick event. So once again, just assigning the function like this. Let's save. And we have some issues, and nope, not props. We want pet here. Let's save, go back, sign in once again. Moment of truth here. Hopefully everything works. I changed my name to Hey with some exclamation marks, and I'm going to just click. We can enter whatever we want here, but we're not doing anything on the database. I'm going to click Save. Holy moly. Our modal closed and our user was loaded with the new name. Congratulations, we just were able to update our profile. And now every time, let's say I sign out and I sign back in again, well, my name's in the database. It's now Hey with very excited exclamation marks. Very, very nice. All right, we've done all of this for the sole purpose of demonstrating sessions. But without profile, without some sort of a necessary user information, it's hard to demonstrate why we need sessions. But now, finally, I know it's long overdue, we're going to learn about sessions and implement it in here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.